At Starbound, we tell stories the human way, not with artificial voices or AI slop. In the end, what's HFY without humanity? Subscribe to keep it this way. My name's Aaron. Let's begin.
The first impact sounded like a rifle shot through steel. Lyle Ranulph's tether jerked as the quarry shuddered, the asteroid mining vessel's hull absorbing the kinetic fury of particles no bigger than grains of sand, traveling at 17 kilometers per second. His heads-up display flooded with warnings, proximity alerts, hull breach indicators, cascading system failures painting themselves across his visor in urgent crimson. "Storm inbound!" The ship's AI announced what his instruments had already screamed. "All external personnel, immediate recall. Repeat, immediate recall." Lyle's gloved hands moved with practiced efficiency across the repair panel he'd been troubleshooting for the past hour. The fuel line coupling was nearly locked. 30 more seconds and he could... Another impact. Closer. The hull plate 2 meters to his left cratered inward with a tortured shriek of alloy. Through his boots, he felt the vibration of countless tiny impacts. The leading edge of the storm. Thousands of micrometeoroids peppering the quarry's skin like cosmic buckshot. "Ranulph, disengage!" That was Drar's voice, rumbling through the comms with the grinding quality all Gruen possessed.
"Your fragile shell cannot withstand this."
Lyle's jaw tightened. 3 months working alongside the Gruen. 3 months of casual contempt delivered in that same gravelly tone. Soft skin, weak bones, short-lived. Never by name unless absolutely necessary. 5 seconds, Lyle transmitted, his fingers flying through the final sequence. The coupling rotated, locked, sealed. Green indicators bloomed across his HUD. "Got it. Returning to..." The universe became violence. Something struck the hull directly beneath his boots. Not a grain of sand this time, but a fleck of ablative paint, no bigger than a pea, that had been accelerated by a previous impact into a secondary projectile. Traveling at orbital velocities, it punched through the ship's already weakened outer plating and detonated the structural foam beneath. The explosion of shrapnel caught Lyle's left leg just above the knee. His EVA suit's sensors registered the breach instantly. Emergency trauma gel deployed with a hiss, flooding the torn section with reactive polymer that hardened in microseconds, forming a pressure seal. The suit's exoskeleton locked, preventing movement that might compromise the seal. But the gel couldn't undo physics. The impact sent Lyle spinning. His tether snapped. He tumbled into the hard black, stars wheeling around him. The pain signals from his leg were so overwhelming they became white noise, his nervous system trying to process damage it had no framework for understanding. His training overrode panic. Stop the spin. Assess. Signal. Lyle fired his thrusters in controlled bursts. The tumbling stopped. He looked at his leg. The trauma gel had done its job. He wasn't decompressing. But through the transparent polymer, he could see why the suit had locked the limb. What had been his leg was now a mangled ruin of torn flesh, shattered bone, and ruptured muscle. The gel held it all together like resin preserving some terrible specimen. Blood, his blood, was suspended in the polymer, frozen mid-spray. Lyle's stomach lurched. He'd seen mining accidents before, limbs caught in crushers, bodies exposed to vacuum, the aftermath of explosive decompression. This was bad. This was amputation-level bad. "Corey, this is Ranulph. I'm adrift. Tether compromised. Need immediate retrieval." A massive shape eclipsed the stars. One of the quarry's grapple arms unfolded with surprising grace. Its fingers, each longer than Lyle was tall, spread wide and closed around him with unsettling precision. Through the metal, he felt the vibration as it began reeling him in.
"Secure,"
Dror's voice crackled.
"Do not move. Your soft shell is already compromised."
Not, "Are you all right?" Just a statement of fact delivered with vacuum's warmth. Lyle watched the hull approach, counting breaths, focusing on rhythm rather than pain. The Gruen didn't understand human physiology. Didn't care to. To them, humans were soap bubbles. Fragile, temporary, baffling in their insistence on existing in environments that could pop them without effort. The grapple deposited him at the airlock. He dragged himself inside, his locked legs smearing trauma gel across the deck. Pressure equalized. The inner door open. 2 Gruen waited. Dror, 2 meters of muscle wrapped in stony gray skin, 4 arms crossed. And Kesh the medic, already scanning him.
Extensive tissue damage,
Kesh announced flatly.
multiple fractures, vascular compromise. The limb is not salvageable.
He looked at Dror.
Prepare surgery bay. Full amputation, mid-femur.
Lyle's head spun. Amputation? Wait.
Human emotional protocols can wait,
Kesh said, already moving.
Dror, assist.
Dror scooped Lyle up, carrying him with efficient indifference. They moved through cramped corridors. The medbay smelled of antiseptic and the mineral scent all Gruen species carried. Kesh had the surgical table prepared. She and Dror removed Lyle's helmet, then cut away the damaged suit. The trauma gel came away in sheets. Lyle forced himself to look away from the ruin of his leg.
Fascinating,
Kesh murmured. Lyle's eyes snapped back. The wound was moving. Purposefully. Torn flesh writhed, reaching across gaps. Severed vessels sprouted new growth. Muscle fibers wove together with visible intent. Kesh's manipulator froze. Dror stepped forward involuntarily. Here we go, Lyle thought. The secret's out. So much for keeping my head down. The Gruen had no context for this. To them, biology was slow, predictable. This defied everything they understood. The tissue continued its impossible work. Shattered bone realigned. Torn skin crept toward itself, filling gaps. Blood stopped seeping. Exposed muscle was covered. Skin sealed. In under a minute, a puckered pink scar ran from knee to mid-thigh. As they watched, even the scar faded to healthy skin tone. Lyle's leg was whole. Kesh's manipulator clattered. Dror's 4 arms hung limp, composure shattered.
What are you?
Dror said slowly. Lyle met his eyes. In them, not contempt or indifference, but genuine shock. Fear. Human, Lyle said quietly. Just a different kind than you're used to. The medbay fell silent except for life support cycling. Outside, the storm hammered the quarry's hull. But inside, everything had changed. The fragile shell was not so fragile after all. The whispers started on the second day. Lyle heard them in the corridors, Gruen voices dropping to their lowest registers as he approached. Conversations cut short by his presence. The mess hall cleared when he entered. Work assignments came through digital channels instead of face-to-face briefings. Even the casual contempt would have been preferable to this new reality. A silence heavy with unspoken questions and barely concealed unease. He'd become something other. The Gruen prided themselves on understanding the universe through direct observation and rigid categorization. They were stone and strength, evolved from high-gravity predators who'd conquered their world through sheer physical durability. Humans, in their framework, were fragile curiosities, interesting in their technological achievements but fundamentally weak, their bodies poorly suited to the hard vacuum and asteroid mining that Gruen excelled at. Lyle's healing had shattered that framework. He found Dror on the observation deck 3 days later, silhouetted against the viewport. The Gruen's 4 arms hung loose, uncertain. Dror. His shoulders tensed. He didn't turn. We're partnered for external work tomorrow.
I requested reassignment. Captain approved it.
Because of what you saw? Silence. Then,
Your kind should not heal like that. Flesh does not command itself. Bone does not weave back together.
Dror's reflection showed eyes that wouldn't meet his.
It is wrong.
It saved my life.
That makes it no less unnatural.
Dror finally turned.
What else can you do? What other wrongness hides in your soft shell?
Lyle had no answer. Drawer left, footsteps heavy. Lyle's quarters were a 3-meter cube. Crash couch, locker, terminal. He sealed the door and pulled up his personal files. The real ones, encrypted beyond most AI's capabilities. The screen filled with text. Most secret / integration war archives / restricted access. He'd read these files 100 times. They never got easier. Project Cascade, full-spectrum regenerative nano-architecture. The integration war had nearly torn humanity apart. Not aliens. Humans had been alone when it started. But civil war between baseline humans and genetically modified integrators. 20 years of savage fighting, atrocities on both sides, technologies deployed that both factions had sworn never to use. The nanites were humanity's desperate gambit, self-repairing soldiers who could survive fatal injuries, keep fighting through wounds that should have killed them. Infiltrators could operate without medical support. Infantry could weather bombardments and be combat-ready within hours. Lyle scrolled to secondary protocols, combat applications. The nanites weren't just defensive. If regeneration could weave flesh, it could reshape it. If they could reinforce bone, they could transform it. He pulled up an image file, stomach churning. Grainy field photograph. A soldier's arm extended toward the camera. But it wasn't an arm anymore. Flesh gone dark, almost black, with metallic veins. The hand had twisted into a serrated blade longer than a forearm, edges sharp enough to split atoms. Caption: Iron Vein Protocol Activation, Subject 47. Note spontaneous weaponization. Subject survived 73 minutes post-activation before systemic collapse. 73 minutes. Then the nanites had consumed their host from the inside out. Lyle closed the file. His hands, he noticed, were shaking. The Iron Vein Protocol was still there, buried in his genetic code alongside the regeneration functions. A weapon of last resort that the peacetime medical authorities had tried to purge from every surviving Cascade recipient, but had never quite managed to eliminate. Too deeply integrated into the nanite programming. Too fundamental to remove without destroying the regeneration capability itself. I will never use it, he told himself. The same promise he'd made 1,000 times. I will die before I use it. But he'd seen the activation codes in his files, knew the mental triggers, and somewhere deep in his hindbrain, in the parts of him that were more nanite than human now, something whispered that it wouldn't be his choice to make if the situation was desperate enough. The alert came during graveyard shift. All crew stations, deep core scanner detected significant anomaly. Command staff to operations immediately. Lyle dressed quickly. The operations center was dominated by holographic displays of the asteroid's structure. Vec manipulated data streams with her 4 arms. Senior staff gave Lyle distance as he took his survey station.
There.
Vec highlighted the asteroid's core.
Non-terrestrial metals, unknown composition, energy signature that defies our database.
The scan showed a pocket 50 meters across, buried 800 meters down. The energy readings pulsed almost organically.
Could be quantum locked ore,
offered Shen, the geologist.
Or a fusion packet.
Or something we should avoid,
Vec countered.
These readings are wrong, too regular, too purposeful.
Lyle's terminal chimed. Corporate override, maximum priority. He read it and felt his blood run cold. Central Command reviewed the scans. They're ordering us to drill directly to it. 200% completion bonus. The operations center went quiet. 200% meant corporate knew this was dangerous and didn't care.
I advise against this,
Vec said carefully.
Unknown energy sources in enclosed spaces have caused significant crew casualties.
Noted. But the order stands. Corporate assumes all liability. The Gruen exchanged glances, rigid with disapproval. But they were contractors. When corporate said drill, you drilled. Vec's 4 arms dropped.
Begin preparations. All safety protocols active. Emergency teams on standby.
The drill bit broke through 8 hours later. Lyle was monitoring progress when every sensor screamed fault warnings. The display filled with errors. The drill camera went dark. Then the emergency channel crackled.
Contact! We've got...
Merrick's voice dissolved into static, reformed into a scream.
Oh, stars! What is that? It's moving in the walls!
The sound that followed would haunt Lyle forever. Wet, tearing, like something ripping through flesh and metal simultaneously. Merrick's shriek cut off abruptly. Then other sounds. Breathing that wasn't breathing. Something massive shifting. And underneath, a vibration that made his bones ache and his nanites writhe. "Merrick, forward team, respond!" Silence. Proximity alarms shrieked. Motion sensors tracked something moving from the drill site back toward the ship, moving fast.
Seal the tunnels! Emergency bulkheads! All personnel evacuate!
The lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everyone in blood red. Displays flickered, died, rebooted with static and errors. Every system screamed. And in the tunnel darkness, something was coming. Something they'd awakened. Something hungry.
You don't have to go down there.
Vex stood in the airlock, forearms crossed, watching Lyle check his seals. "Someone has to confirm what happened. I'm the human representative."
The disposable one.
Dror's voice gravelly and bitter. He had his own suit prepared.
They send the soft shell first.
"Then why are you coming?" Silence. Then,
Because it killed my crew. Because stone does not abandon stone, even when accompanied by mysteries we do not trust.
they descended in silence. Lyle's helmet lamps cut through dust so thick it moved like liquid, swirling in their wake. The tunnel walls bore the marks of the drill's passage, grooves and score marks from the massive boring head, patterns of heat discoloration where the rock had liquefied before cooling. Standard mining tunnel, standard descent. Except nothing about this felt standard. The crunch of their boots echoed wrong in the enclosed space. Too sharp, too loud, as if the stone itself was listening. Lyle's suit reported normal atmospheric pressure, normal composition. The tunnel should have been safe without helmets, but neither of them had suggested removing them. Some instinct, older than reason, screamed that they needed every barrier between themselves and whatever waited below. Dror moved ahead, his forearms carrying tools and weapons with practiced efficiency. Plasma cutter on his primary right, seismic scanner on his primary left. The lower arms held emergency beacons and a medical kit. The Gruen equivalent, anyway, designed more for patching equipment than treating flesh. The tension between them was a physical presence, not the casual contempt of before, but something more complicated. Dror had requested reassignment to avoid Lyle, had called his regeneration unnatural. Now here they were, descending into darkness together because duty demanded it, and pride wouldn't allow either of them to show fear.
800 meters,
Dror announced.
The drill site should be.
His words died as their lights found the cavern. The drill was destroyed. Not damaged, not broken down, destroyed. Torn apart by forces that had treated 50 tons of industrial equipment like tissue paper. The massive boring head lay on its side, its tungsten carbide teeth sheared off. The shaft housing had been ripped open lengthwise, revealing the drive mechanisms inside like exposed organs. Hydraulic fluid pooled on the cavern floor, mixing with something else, something darker and thicker that Lyle's scanner couldn't identify. And there were bodies. 4 Gruen, scattered across the cavern floor like discarded toys. Merrick was closest, identifiable only by the foreman's insignia on what remained of his suit. His stone-gray hide, the same nearly indestructible skin that had made the Gruen such formidable miners, was shattered. Great chasms ran across his torso, exposing the dense muscle and crystalline bone structure beneath. His forearms were twisted at angles that defied biology. Lyle's stomach lurched. He'd seen Gruen injured before. Mining accidents, equipment failures. Their bodies could withstand trauma that would pulverize humans. They didn't break like this. They couldn't break like this.
By the Stone Fathers,
Dror breathed, dropping to one knee beside Merrick's body. His hands, all four of them, shook as they hovered over the corpse, afraid to touch it, as if contact would make the impossible real.
what could do this?
The Aaron Lyle suit recycler carried scents his filters couldn't quite process. Ozone from overloaded equipment, the ancient mineral smell of disturbed stone that hadn't seen atmosphere in millennia, and something else. Something organic but not quite alive, like the smell of a machine shop mixed with rotting meat. A low hum vibrated through the cavern floor. Subsonic, felt more than heard, making Lyle's bones ache and his nanites squirm in his bloodstream. "Dror," Lyle said quietly. "The walls." The Gruen's helmet lights swung up, illuminating the cavern's true scale. It was vast, 100 meters across at least, the ceiling lost in darkness above, and every surface was covered in patterns. Geometric designs that hurt to look at directly. They pulsed with faint internal light, not bioluminescence but something deeper, as if the stone itself was alive and dreaming. The patterns were too precise to be natural, too complex to be simple decoration. They were symbols, or circuitry, or something that existed in the space between both concepts.
This is a tomb.
Dror said, his voice carrying the weight of certainty.
Or a prison. A warning that something should never be.
Movement in the shadows. Just a flicker at the edge of Lyle's helmet lamps. Something that didn't quite obey the laws of how solid objects should move. Too fluid, too fast, shifting from one position to another, with movements that suggested too many joints. They spun toward it, plasma cutters raised. Lyle caught a glimpse. Biomechanical, all dark metal and organic sinew flowing together in ways that made his eyes water. Limbs that branched and rebranched, each ending in serrated edges. A body structure that might have been quadrupedal or hexapedal or something that changed configuration as it moved. Then it was gone, scuttling into darkness with a sound like metal scraping across stone.
Contact.
Dror transmitted on the emergency channel.
Unknown hostile in the excavation site. We are...
Static answered him. The creature's presence was interfering with their comms. Or the cavern's geometry was. Or the pulsing patterns on the walls. Lyle's HUD flickered, error messages cascading across his vision. They were alone. The attack came without warning. One moment they were backing toward the tunnel entrance, weapons raised, searching the shadows. The next, the creature was there, a blur of dark metal and writhing sinew that moved faster than Lyle's eyes could track. It hit Dror first, talons that looked like they'd been grown rather than forged, raking across the Gruen's chest. Dror's armor held. For half a second, Lyle saw the talons scrape across the stone-gray hide that had turned aside mining equipment and asteroid debris. Then the hide tore. Not cut, tore, like fabric under too much stress, the Gruen's nearly indestructible skin parting under those serrated edges. Dark blood, nearly black in the helmet lamps, sprayed across the cavern floor. Dror's roar shook dust from the ceiling. He brought his plasma cutter up, fired point blank into the creature's mass. The superheated plasma barely scorched its hide, leaving trails of blackened metal flesh that healed almost as fast as they appeared.
Run!
Dror shoved Lyle backward with his lower arms, a reflexive action, the durable protecting the fragile, even now.
Get to the ship! Warn them!
They ran. The tunnel that had seemed so wide on the descent was suddenly claustrophobic, a throat trying to swallow them. Behind them, the creature pursued with movements that sounded like a factory dismantling itself. Metal grinding, organic tissue tearing, the subsonic hum that made Lyle's skull ache. Lyle fired his plasma cutter blindly behind him. The weapon's discharge lit the tunnel in stuttering blue-white flashes that revealed the creature in stop-motion horror. Too many limbs, a body that seemed to shift configuration with each movement. And eyes, if they were eyes, that glowed with the same internal light as the cavern's patterns. They made it 50 meters before Dror stumbled. The Gruen caught himself with his lower arms, kept moving. But Lyle saw the dark trail he was leaving. The wound across his chest was deep. Too deep. Gruen could survive injuries that would kill most species, but there were limits even to their durability.
Keep moving,
Dror growled. His voice had lost its commanding rumble, reduced to something thinner, more strained.
Don't stop for...
The creature hit him again. This time Lyle saw it clearly. The thing flowed around Dror's attempt to block, talons finding gaps in his defense. They caught his primary right arm and his chest simultaneously, dragging deep furrows that made the first wound look superficial. Dror collapsed. Not a stumble this time, a full collapse, his massive frame hitting the tunnel floor with enough force to crack the stone beneath him. His plasma cutter clattered away, still discharging, melting a hole in the wall. Through the swirling dust and his own horror, Lyle saw Dror's face in the reflected light of their helmet lamps. The Gruen was staring at his own torn chest, at the exposed muscle and shattered fragments of crystalline bone. His 4 hands moved weakly, trying to push the wounds closed, but there was too much damage and too much blood. But it wasn't the pain that broke Dror's expression. It was the disbelief. "This cannot happen to me," that face said. "I am Gruen, I am stone, I am unbreakable." His worldview was cracking open like his hide, reality reshaping itself into something that made no sense according to everything he'd been taught to believe. The creature drove them into a dead-end maintenance conduit. Lyle dragged Dror backward, the Gruen's blood making the floor treacherous. The conduit had seemed like escape. A side tunnel, too small for the creature to follow. But it ended after 20 meters in a sealed bulkhead that wouldn't respond to emergency overrides. They were trapped. The creature appeared at the conduit entrance, backlit by the tunnel beyond. It moved slowly now, almost leisurely. Its limbs scraped along the conduit walls, leaving deep gouges in metal and stone. The subsonic hum intensified, making Lyle's vision blur, and his nanites writhe like they were trying to escape his flesh. Dror tried to raise his plasma cutter, but his primary right arm, the one the creature had savaged, wouldn't respond. He switched to his lower right, movements trembling with effort and blood loss. The weapon's discharge indicator showed less than 5% charge. Not enough. Not nearly enough. Lyle's own cutter was dead, its power cell drained from continuous firing. They had no weapons, no escape route, no way to call for help. He looked at Dror, the Gruen who'd mocked him, who'd called him fragile and weak and unnatural, who'd shoved him to safety despite his contempt, who was dying now, his unbreakable hide shattered, his stone-strong body broken. Then Lyle looked at the creature stalking toward them, savoring the kill. Their conventional means are useless. The thought arrived with crystalline clarity. Plasma cutters couldn't hurt it. Gruen's strength couldn't stop it. Everything they had, everything they were, wasn't enough. But Lyle had something else. Something buried deep in his genetics, hidden in the spaces between his cells. Something that humanity had sworn never to reveal to the wider galaxy. A secret from a war that had nearly destroyed them. "I will die before I use it," he'd promised himself. But watching Dror's blood pool on the conduit floor, hearing the creature's approach, Lyle realized dying was the easy choice. The hard choice was living with what came next. He closed his eyes, reached deep into his own biology, past the regeneration functions, past the safety limits, into the dark protocols that medical authorities had tried to purge but never quite eliminated. The activation code was there, waiting. They'd always been there. I'm sorry, he thought, though to whom he wasn't sure. To his ancestors who'd created this curse? To Dror for what he was about to witness? To himself for breaking a promise he'd never been strong enough to keep? Lyle opened his eyes, met the creature's glowing gaze, and felt a profound, crushing regret for what he was about to become. His lips moved. A single word, spoken so quietly it barely registered on his suit's recorder. Cascade. The nanites in his bloodstream screamed and began to change him. The word hung in the air for less than a heartbeat. Then Lyle's body answered. It started in his bloodstream, billions of nanites receiving the activation code simultaneously, shifting from repair protocols to something far more aggressive. The change rippled outward from his core, a network of shimmering lines flashing beneath his skin like lightning frozen in flesh. Pain hit him like a plasma torch to the spine. Lyle's muscles seized, every fiber contracting at once. His back arched. A groan tore from his throat. Raw, animal, the sound of a body being rebuilt from the inside out. His suit strained against the transformation, seams splitting as his frame expanded, bone density increasing, muscle fibers thickening and reweaving themselves into configurations that hadn't existed seconds before. Subdermal plates rose beneath his skin, not breaking through but pushing up from underneath. Hardened carbon mesh forming an interlocking armor that turned his flesh into something between biology and engineering. The plates were black, visible through the transparencies in his suit, geometric patterns that matched the ones on the cavern walls in ways that made Lyle's fragmenting consciousness scream. His hands clenched into fists. Bones in his forearms cracked. Not breaking but restructuring, making space for what came next. From his wrist, just below the base of his palms, long blades of the same dark material pushed through flesh and suit fabric, with a sound like tearing silk. The nanites instantly wove flexible, airtight polymer seals around the exit points, preventing decompression even as the blades extended. Snicked. The blades were wicked things, serrated along one edge, smooth and razor-sharp along the other. Each was as long as his forearm, tapering to points that could punch through starship hull plating. They gleamed in his helmet lamps with an oily sheen that suggested they were coated in something the nanites had synthesized from his own biology. Toxins, maybe, or molecular disruptors. Lyle's eyes snapped open. In his helmet's faceplate reflection, he saw them glowing with faint blue light, the nanite's energy signature burning through his retinas, turning his gaze into something predatory and utterly inhuman. The creature, which had been stalking forward with such confident leisure, stopped. For the first time, Lyle saw hesitation in its movements. Recognition, maybe. As if it understood, on some fundamental level, that the fragile thing it had been hunting was fragile no longer.
Lyle,
Dror's voice was weak, fading.
What are you?
Lyle didn't answer. Couldn't answer. The Iron Vein Protocol had buried his conscious mind beneath layers of combat programming and survival instinct that predated human civilization. He was a weapon now, purpose without personality, violence without hesitation. The creature lunged. Lyle met it head-on. What followed wasn't a fight so much as a collision of evolutionary impossibilities. The creature moved with the speed that had destroyed the Gruen drill team, talons extending from limbs that branched and rebranched in configurations that defied geometry. It struck at Lyle's throat, his chest, his legs, killing blows delivered with mechanical precision. Lyle flowed around them. His body moved with a speed that shouldn't have been possible for something with human musculature. The nanites had overclocked his nervous system, turned his reflexes into something that operated on quantum rather than chemical timescales. He could see the creature's attacks coming, could track the trajectories of talons moving faster than sound, could position himself in the microsecond gaps between strikes. A talon raked across his shoulder. Armor screamed. Flesh tore 6 centimeters deep. The blow would have taken his arm at the joint, should have. But the nanites were already streaming into the wound, stitching tissue even as Lyle pivoted. He brought his right blade up in an arc that caught the creature's attacking limb mid-strike. The blade sheared through. Biomechanical flesh parted like tissue paper. The limb severed at what might have been an elbow joint. The creature's shriek filled the conduit. Not sound, but a subsonic pulse that made the walls vibrate. It lashed out with 3 more limbs simultaneously, accepting wounds to deliver killing blows. Lyle took them all. One talon punched through his abdomen, exit wound out his back. Blood and shredded organs sprayed. Another caught his thigh, muscle opened to bone. The third scraped across his faceplate. Crack, atmospheric breach. His helmet flooded with the conduit's air. Any of those wounds should have been fatal. All 3 together should have killed him instantly. Instead, Lyle drove both blades through the creature's core. He felt them punch through layers of armor flesh, felt the resistance as they encountered something that might have been a heart or a reactor or something that existed in the space between both concepts. The creature convulsed, its remaining limbs thrashing in death spasms that tore new wounds across Lyle's body. He twisted the blades and pushed deeper. The creature's internal light, that glow that matched the cavern patterns, flickered, dimmed. The subsonic hum that had made Lyle's bones ache cut off like a severed wire. Its limbs went limp, still twitching but without coordination, without purpose. It collapsed. Lyle collapsed with it. The Iron Vein protocol didn't recede gracefully. The blades retracted first, sliding back into his forearms with the same tearing sensation they'd emerged with, except worse because now the adrenaline and combat programming were fading. The subdermal armor softened, the carbon plates dissolving back into his bloodstream where the nanites could reclaim the materials. His enhanced musculature deflated, bone density normalized, nervous system downclocked to merely human speeds. And the cost hit him. Not as pain, but as an absolute, crushing nullity. As if his very atoms were being taxed for energy they no longer possessed. The biological bill came due all at once, an invoice written in cellular exhaustion and bone-deep depletion. Every cell in his body was screaming. The nanites had pushed him past biological limits, had forced transformations that should have taken weeks of preparation and careful calibration. They'd burned through his energy reserves, his fat stores, had started cannibalizing his own muscle tissue to fuel the transformation. Now they were trying to repair the damage they'd done while simultaneously maintaining his basic life functions, and there simply wasn't enough of him left to do both. Lyle's vision grayed at the edges. His helmet, cracked and leaking, filled with the taste of blood from internal hemorrhaging the nanites were too exhausted to fix. He could feel his hearts, plural now. The protocol had briefly grown him a second one for redundancy, struggling to maintain circulation through flesh that was simultaneously shutting down and trying to rebuild itself. Somewhere nearby, Dror was saying something. His gravelly voice sounded like it was coming from the other end of a very long tunnel. Lyle couldn't make out the words, couldn't form a response even if he'd understood them. His last conscious thought was a fragment of the medical file he'd read in his quarters. Subject survived 73 minutes post-activation before systemic collapse. He'd lasted maybe 15. Then, darkness took him. And for a while, there was nothing but the nanites' desperate work and the slow, uncertain climb back towards something that might eventually resemble human again. Lyle woke to clean sheets and the antiseptic smell of the medbay. His body felt like it had been taken apart and reassembled by someone who'd lost the instruction manual halfway through. Every muscle ached. His bones felt hollow. When he tried to lift his hand, it trembled with the effort of moving a few centimeters. But he was alive.
You returned to consciousness faster than expected,
Kresh's voice said from somewhere to his left.
Gruen biology would require weeks to recover from such cellular trauma. Your nanites accelerated the process to 3 days.
3 days? He'd been unconscious for 3 days. Lyle turned his head. Even that small movement took concentrated effort, and saw Dror in the adjacent biobed. The Gruen's primary right arm was encased in a regeneration cast, nutrient fluid cycling through tubes that fed directly into his bloodstream. His chest was wrapped in similar technology, the deep wounds from the creature's talons still healing but no longer life-threatening. Dror was staring at him, not with contempt, not with suspicion, not even with the uncomfortable uncertainty that had defined their interaction since Lyle's leg had regenerated in front of him. The Gruen's dark eyes held something else entirely. Profound, earth-shaking awe.
You saved my life,
Dror said quietly. His translator struggled with the harmonic complexity, as if the words carried meanings in his native language that Standard couldn't quite capture.
You became something. I have no words for what you became, but you fought a thing that shattered Stonehide like glass. And you won.
I nearly died doing it, Lyle managed, his voice barely above a whisper.
But you did not.
Dror's lower left hand made a gesture Lyle had never seen before. All 4 fingers spread wide, then pressed against his own chest. It looked ceremonial, important.
You carried me back through those tunnels, unconscious, barely alive yourself. You did not leave me to die in the darkness.
Lyle had no memory of that. The nanites must have operated his body on pure survival programming, dragging them both to safety before finally allowing him to shut down. The creature? He asked.
Dead. Destroyed in the tunnel collapse that followed your escape.
Kesh's voice held no emotion, but Lyle caught the slight emphasis on tunnel collapse.
According to the official report filed with corporate, a catastrophic equipment malfunction triggered a seismic event. The excavation site is sealed. The anomaly is classified as too dangerous for further investigation. The bonuses have been paid.
A cover story. Sanitized. Safe. The corporation got its narrative. Dangerous mining conditions. Tragic but ultimately explicable losses. No mention of ancient prisoners. No mention of biomechanical horrors. Certainly no mention of what Lyle had become. No mention of humanity's secret. The crew? Lyle asked.
Sworn to confidentiality agreements.
Kesh approached his bed, her scanner reading his vitals.
What they saw stays on this ship. What you did stays on this ship. Captain Vec has made this very clear.
3 weeks later, the quarry hung in high orbit above a refueling station, taking on supplies for the journey to their next contract. Lyle stood on the observation deck, watching the starfield rotate slowly beyond the viewport. His body had healed. The nanites had done their work, pushing him back toward baseline human functionality. But he could still feel echoes of the transformation in his bones, phantom sensations of blades that no longer existed, and armor that had dissolved back into his bloodstream. The door hissed open behind him. Heavy footsteps approached. Gruen gate, unmistakable. Dror? Lyle said without turning. The Gruen moved to stand beside him, all 4 arms hanging loose at his sides. His primary right arm, newly healed, still showed the faint discoloration where the regeneration cast had worked its magic. They stood in silence for a long moment, 2 beings from different species watching the same stars. Then Dror's primary right hand, the one the creature had nearly destroyed, came to rest on Lyle's shoulder. The weight was considerable, but the gesture was gentle, careful. The touch of someone handling something they'd learned was far more valuable than they'd previously understood.
We saw stone,
Dror said, his voice grinding softer than Lyle had ever heard it.
For all our years, we saw ourselves as the durable ones, the strong ones. We looked at your kind and saw only fragility, soft shells that the void could break with barely a thought.
You weren't wrong, Lyle replied. We are fragile.
No,
Dror's hand tightened slightly on his shoulder.
we did not see the iron within, the strength that bends rather than shatters, the will that chooses to endure what stone cannot.
He paused, and Lyle could hear the weight of everything unsaid in that silence.
You are not fragile, Lyle Ranulph. You are resilient. There is a vast difference.
Lyle closed his eyes, felt the phantom weight of blades in his forearms, the ghost of armor beneath his skin, remembered the cost of that resilience, the price paid in cellular trauma and borrowed time. But he also remembered Dror shoving him to safety despite their complicated history, remembered the Gruen's shattered worldview as reality reshaped itself around him, remembered standing together against something neither of them had been prepared to face. We should tell them, Lyle said quietly. The Gruen, the other species, about what humanity really is, about what we can do.
No.
Dror's response was immediate and certain.
Let them continue to think you fragile. Let them make that mistake.
His hand on Lyle's shoulder lifted, became the ceremonial gesture he'd made in the medbay. 4 fingers spread, then pressed against his own chest.
Because when the galaxy sees soft shells, they do not look deeper. They do not see the iron waiting beneath. And perhaps that is humanity's greatest weapon, being underestimated.
The observation deck's lighting dimmed as the quarry rotated away from the refueling station's glare. In the darkness, Lyle could see their reflections in the viewport, human and Gruen, standing together, a partnership forged in blood and revelation. The galaxy thought it knew what humans were. Fragile, temporary, unsuited for the hard work of space. The galaxy was wrong. And Lyle was content, for now, to let them continue believing their comfortable lie. Because somewhere in his genetics, buried in the spaces between his cells, humanity's secret waited. The iron within the soft shell. The blade waiting to be unsheathed. The galaxy had dismissed them as weak. They had no idea how dangerous that mistake could be.
Hello, my all members, subscribers, followers. I said that my channel is low on channel, and I have submitted some videos in English to change the motto of my channel. Please subscribe my channel, view my videos, and share in all of your friends on Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, every social media platform to send my video and view more videos. Viewers in my video, please help me to provide some time to spend with me. Thank you to all members who can subscribe my channel and support me some time. Please view more video and entertainment video. Please help me sometime to support my channel because I am a low middle class family. Please help me.